It's a very sobering feeling to be up in space and realize that one's safety factor was determined by the lowest bidder on a government contract.
The Interplanetary Podcast. The exploration of space for the benefit of all mankind. Your hosts here in London, Matthew Russell and Jamie Franklin.
Jamie, who was that?
My main man, Mr. Alan Shepard.
Alan Shepard.
I mean, I love Alan Shepard, and you love him more than me, so you must really love him.
Everyone loves Alan Shepard.
Oh.
The reason why he's quoted, you'll see in a second.
Yeah.
But I thought I'd just quickly flag up, I'm going to be a moderator, Jamie, at a space conference.
Check you out. Can you tell us some details?
Yeah. Yes, it's for spacetalks.biz. That's spacetalks.biz on the 5th of March in London at a venue near St. Paul's. So if you want to come and join in, let's read some burb. It's a conference is a unique opportunity not only to discuss and experience the future of the industry, but also to meet and network with key industry leaders.
OMG. Well, that sounds incredible. So if you want to go and throw rotten tomatoes at Matt, get yourself down on March the 5th. So I assume tickets and everything can be bought from or got from spacetalks.biz, Matt?
Correct.
There we go.
Absolutely correct. So the inference there is I'm a key industry leader, Jamie. I just thought I'd point that out.
Yeah, weird how they didn't invite me. I guess I'm not not key. Or maybe I'm not a leader. Oh, I don't know.
You're a key industry number two.
I'm more like a fluffer, aren't I? I'm a space industry fluffer.
You're more the Riker to my Picard.
I'll take that.
Yeah.
I'll take that. Send in the clowns. Matt, on this day,
yes,
31st of January, Ham, the astro chimp, I mean, this guy, the Yuri Gagarin of apes, born in Central Africa, at the age of 4, he became the first Hominidae in space. 1961. Mercury Project astronaut. I mean, I don't know where to start. I'm so excited. Well, I hope he was treated fairly.
Well,
I mean, he didn't have much choice in it. I'm a bit upset about that.
Well, he was 4 years old, little fella. Yeah, born in Africa, dragged over to some zoo in Miami, and then picked out by the Air Force. Basically, he was one of 80 chimps, so he was whittled down from 80 chimp candidates. And he was officially called Chimp 65. HAM itself is an acronym, Jamie, you'll be pleased to hear.
Oh, you know I love it. And it stands for?
Holloman Aerospace Medical Centre.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
I like it.
But the boss of Holloman Aerospace Medical Centre was Lieutenant Colonel Hamilton Ham Blackshear. That's how ace a name is that?
Right. Tell you what, we'd bang him out.
Lieutenant Colonel Hamilton Ham Blackshear.
We could do a whole podcast on great space names. That's going up there in the top 10 for me.
Yeah, well, Chimp 65, they didn't want to name him before he actually come back safely, because the press, if they had to write about a named animal, it might be more upsetting.
Of course.
Because it's more humanized, isn't it? And so
I mean, I say of course, it's wildly cruel to send any animal against their will into space for an experiment. However,
it'd be interesting, wouldn't it? If I guess a lot of that has to come down to whether Ham was suffering from too much stress. So Chimp 65, or as his handlers called him, Chop Chop Chang.
Okay.
And the mission patch has even got Chop Chop Chang on the front of it.
I'm looking at it now. I mean, it's a great patch.
It is a great patch. I might
again, I feel kind of uneasy, Matt, talking about this.
Well, see how uneasy you feel now. So he was obviously flown on a Mercury Redstone rocket, Mercury Redstone 2, MR2, and he was trained by a chap called Joseph Vincent Brady, who was actually a pioneer of behavioural pharmacology and also a pioneer of human research ethics. So it's not like the ethics was lost on this guy. And he trained he trained.
Human.
Yeah, human ethics. He trained up Ham to respond to lights and sounds, and he did this by giving Ham electric shocks to his feet if he failed to push a lever in response to lights and sounds. But he did get a delicious banana pellet if he did good.
I hate this.
So, unlike the preceding primate flights, Ham actually flew. So he wasn't just a sort of passive passenger. He was actually a really important test pilot. He's a Mercury astronaut, and he was testing the systems for Alan Shepard, who would go up less than a year later to become the first American in space.
Well, I'm kind of speechless. I mean, I guess, are you going to tell me that the chimp died? I don't want to ruin the ending, but did the chimp come back okay?
So, yes, well, they measured, while Ham was up, like a sort of Formula One racing driver, his vital signs were monitored from the ground, and his performance. And his performance was only marginally slower than test flights, which was really promising news in terms of human beings actually being able to function in space. Because here there was a hominidae actually functioning in space. I think the word hominidae is quite new, Jamie, I think it encompasses the great apes and the hominids. Just in case you're wondering.
Matt, it was the first time I'd heard it.
Yeah,
I thought it was simian. I thought was the word.
I think a lot of those phrases have all become very inaccurate. It's amazing how much that keeps changing, all that stuff. All the way that you classify things, it's an odd one, but yes, he's the first of the great apes and hominids. So he's up there with sentient beings.
Well, I think,
but
absolutely.
But you still haven't found whether he died or not, Jamie. But so his spaceship unfortunately depressurized. But the good news here is that Ham's spacesuit was extremely good, and so he didn't suffer at all. And after 16 minutes flying around in space, he eventually splashed down with only a bruised nose.
A bruised nose. Well, I guess it could have been worse.
So he went to live a nice, happy life until he was 25, mostly at the National Zoo in Washington. And when he died, the Americans thought about copying the Russians, who, as you know, had Belka and Strelka, the space dogs. They had those special animals stuffed, and you can still see them on display. But that's not really the kind of taste of the American public, or, by the sounds of it, Jamie Franklin either.
Definitely not.
So he was buried properly at the International Space Hall of the Space Hall of Fame, sorry. And Son's skeleton, unfortunately, that skeleton is actually part of the collection of the National Museum of Health and Medicine.
Okay.
But here's an interesting little side note to all this, Jamie. Ham's backup pilot was a female chimp, and she was the only female chimp on the entire program. Which for me suggests that female chimps were better, because if there's 79 males and one female, and she's like in the top two, doesn't that kind of suggest statistically that female chimps are better? So she became the last surviving astro chimp and died at the age of 41, so almost twice Ham's age, in 1998 after having 9 kids for the Air Force breeding program.
Blimey, what a matriarch.
Yeah. But 31st of January, Jamie, is not only famous for Ham, well, I think that's the big one, but there's 2 other pretty exciting events that also happened on the 31st of January, like really big ones. So Explorer 1, the first ever US satellite, hot on the heels of Sputnik, 4th satellite ever. It's the first of 90 Explorer satellites. So Explorer 1 is the first of 90 of them. Went up on your favourite named rocket, Jamie, the Juno.
Oh, Juno, yes.
And the Explorer 1, unlike Sputnik, did proper science and basically discovered the Van Allen belts, which is a pretty amazing thing.
It's pretty important, that.
And going back to females, it was an all-female computer team who were responsible for doing all the maths. They had to do it all by hand, and they plotted basically the satellite trajectories.
Of course they did.
The computers,
Slay
as they
my
were called
queens.
And 10 years after Ham, in 1971, we of course have Apollo 14, which included Alan Shepard, Stuart Rooser, and Edgar Mitchell, who went to the Fra Mauro Highlands on the moon.
That is a strong lineup right there.
It is a strong lineup, isn't it? But Alan Shepard, yeah, so that was Alan Shepard's chance to go to the moon after becoming the first man in space. What a
Rooser,
dude.
Mitchell, Saturn. Damn.
Yeah. So I shall tell you what's happening this weekend, Jamie, that I think's quite exciting. We've talked about it on the show. You don't hear about it very much, so I'm flying its flag a little bit. MEV1, MEV1, which
is that an acronym?
Yes, it is an acronym. But what is it for? Mission Extension Vehicle 1. Yes, so it's there to extend the lives of space vehicles. And it's going to rendezvous with Intelsat 901 and essentially drag it off into another orbit for a bit to do a bit of testing. And then it's going to operate Intelsat 901 for another 5 years so that the Intelsat 901 can keep going longer, which saves quite a lot of money because this Intelsat is pretty goddamn expensive. So we talked about it at the time. It's built by Northrop Grumman, or Orbital ATK as it was before it got bought by Northrop Grumman. And launched on the 9th of October on a Proton with our favourite upper stage, the Breeze M.
Oh, the Breeze
M.
That's BRIZM.
Yeah. So it's not a refueling mission. So as we said before, that is incredibly complicated because if to refuel, you'd have to open the satellite up, drain it, put the fuel in, which is extremely volatile, seal it all up, make sure all the interfaces and everything are correct, and separate from the spacecraft. So orders of magnitude more complex. But yes, it just attaches itself to the spacecraft and does all the station keeping exercises. But once it's done, it has the ability to sort of undock and dock again with another spacecraft. So the MEV-1 can last about 15 years. So it should be able to do it with a couple more other satellites. So it's quite an efficient way of dealing with things.
I heard somewhere that you were quite an efficient docker. Is that true?
Jack, I doubt that that's going to stay. Pardon the expression. Is what he said to me.
that is so.
I might actually leave it in now. Is what he said to me.
I might leave it in there. Oh God. Oh, that's good. That's good stuff. Oh, that's a tonic. Okay, where were we? Sorry.
Well, a bit of news this week, Jamie. This is the kind of news that you can either feel great about or sad about.
Oh God, not another ape.
No, it's not an ape. It's not that sad. Although, Ham did survive. And how many chimps can say they've been to space?
Yeah.
It's a tough one. Remember, if you're testing a vehicle for humans...
Matt, do you think Ham walked back into the zoo, like, strutting his stuff, and all the ladies were like, oh my God, what was it like? And he was just like, oh, what? What, 0G? Yeah, it was all right.
Yeah.
Yeah, maybe. All right, you're winning me round, but not much.
It's a tough one, isn't it? I suppose, yeah, it's hard to put sentient beings into the... I mean, could they have asked Ham? Maybe they could ask Ham and say, Ham, how do you feel about going into space? And then Ham signed back, yeah, it's cool.
I don't think it is a tough one. I think it's just inherently cruel. Job done, full stop.
Job done, full stop.
But I'm glad that he came back alive, at least.
Yeah, no, true.
There we go.
Yeah, so a SpaceX Falcon, it involves no cruelty to animals, this one. Well, actually, I suppose it might involve cruelty to animals, actually, Jamie. The Falcon 9, the booster, Falcon 9 booster 1051.3, has flown again. After it actually threw the Crew Dragon capsule up to the ISS and launched a bunch of Canadian satellites. This is its third time, and it's flown another batch of 60 Starlinks. It seems every week now we just say, oh yeah, there's another 60 Starlinks going up.
Another 60 up.
Much to the chagrin of astronomers and space environmentalists. And the reason why I say it might be cruel to animals, of course, is there's all these new lights in the sky that might be confusing to certain animals.
It might be confusing. They might think that it's daytime.
Maybe there's some chimp in some part of Central Africa looking up at the sky and going, what the hell is going on?
Yeah.
Gets a little bit scared and distressed.
How can Musk possibly afford it?
But then he sort of goes back to the other chimps, and the other chimps say, yeah, it's going to be brilliant because we'll get internet access soon, even in this rubbishy bit of the jungle.
No, and he turns around to him and says, it's not rubbish. This is brilliant. We're lucky to be in pure nature. We don't need modern life. And they're all like, shut up, Grandad. We want an iPad.
And all those chimp tea parties are going to be ruined by all the chimps looking at their mobile phones instead of looking at each other's eyes over the tops of their little cups of tea.
This is it. # PG tips.
So, in a similar news story, which I think's really pertinent, there was I was watching Twitter unfold around this one. There's a really great company called Leo Labs. A great organisation called Leo Labs, and they warned on Twitter, this is what they said, we are monitoring a close approach event involving IRIS 13777, the decommissioned space telescope launched in 1983, and GGSE-4, an experimental US payload launched in 1967. They have a combined velocity of 4.7 kilometers a second. Two large satellites are going to come within 50 meters of one another. Now, at some point, they thought it was down to 15 meters. I was reading it, so surely that must be miles. No, it's meters. It's like, what the hell? So, yeah, there was a risk, a 1 in 100 chance, and actually it got a little bit higher than that at some point, but a 1 in 100 chance that these two things were going to hit each other. And this is what our mate Jonathan McDowell said, and he said, given that the size of the satellites are about the size of a car and a rubbish bin, a 15 to 30 metre predicted miss distance is alarming.
Yeah, that is alarming. My God.
Well, and one of the satellites has got a 60-foot boom arm dangling down the back of it, so you can't really be sure that it's going to miss at all. Like, if any bit of it touches, it's going to smash it into, like, just unbelievable smithereens.
It's not what we need, Matt, more space junk.
But I watched a lot of astronomers go out into their urban light polluted areas with small telescopes to actually look at this bright spot as it trailed across the sky and made sure that they could still see the bright spot trailing across the sky after the impact event. And luckily they could, Jamie. So it was over Pittsburgh, 550 miles above Pittsburgh at the time. And they missed, but if they'd have hit, it could have endangered hundreds of other satellites with the debris, and of course that debris field would stay around for a very long time. Something has to be done.
Crazy.
Something has to be done, Jamie, and I don't mean stick up hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of Starlinks.
Yeah, that's definitely not going to help. My God. Oh, what a relief. Do you know what, Matt? When you said Pittsburgh, a couple of weeks ago, I had a really weird dream that I was in Pittsburgh, and it was amazing. And I lived in this house that looked really gothic. And so I'm wondering if it's a sign. Is anyone listening from Pittsburgh? Get in touch with me. Maybe I need to go and visit. Maybe my destiny is there.
Wow. Wouldn't that...
Yeah, when you said Pittsburgh, the house that I dreamt about flashed in my head really strongly. I think it's a sign.
Wow, wouldn't that be amazing if someone got in contact and then you ended up living in Pittsburgh?
Someone got in contact and went, "Oh, it's weird you should say that because we're looking for a more handsome than most space podcaster to come and live here. There's a house up for rent. It's an old gothic building.
And because it's old and Gothic, the doorways are quite short, and so lots of tool buyers aren't interested.
Yeah, it's specifically made for somebody who's 5'7.5", and I'll be like, "Oh my God,
this is perfect,
Matt. We're going to Pittsburgh because obviously you've got to come too."
Oh yeah, well, I'll have to buy a house nearby,
and then we'll go and buy a chimp from the zoo and free it, and it will live in our garden, and it just lives on banana pellets. But we never
electrocute its
never
feet.
send it to space or electrocute it. Yeah.
Jamie, did you see? Talking of like trippy dreams, did you see the beautiful, and I do mean beautiful, video of the sun's surface that was released this week?
Not only did I see it, the wallpaper on my phone is now that golden honeycomb image. It's quite stunning.
It is quite stunning, yeah. So you can see structures that are only 30 kilometres across on the surface of the sun. And this has been made possible by the largest solar telescope, the 4-metre Daniel K. Inouye Solar Telescope that's on the Haleakala 3,000-metre high volcano in Hawaii, on the island of Maui.
We need to go. We really need to go to Hawaii.
I'd so love to do that.
So anyone in Hawaii and Pittsburgh, get in touch.
And do you know what the really exciting thing about this is? This is one of those missions where there's lots of things going on because there's an ESA and NASA solar orbiter, SOLO. And that's going to be a new space observatory that's being launched next week from Cape Canaveral. And that is going to get closer to the sun than any other satellite ever. So that's only 42 million kilometres away. That's much nearer than Mercury. So that's like flying within the orbit of Mercury. And the weird thing, the resolution won't be as good. You know, these 4-metre telescopes on the ground, that's like so hard to do in space because you just haven't got the fairing size or the rocket size to be able to launch something like that. So this solar telescope, although the resolution won't be as good, it's got a much broader spectrum of measurement, so it's more broadband.
Right.
And so if you combine the resolution of the Earth-based telescope and this sort of broad range of frequencies that the solar orbiter can do, you're going to get the most detailed pictures ever of the sun. And that's going to be just so cool.
Honestly, that stuff blows my mind. And that's what really excites me, when we get these images that we've never seen before. And it's like, how did we get that? It's absolutely incredible.
Yeah, it's beautiful. It's definitely worth watching that video just with your favourite bit of music, maybe the podcast theme music, and just listen to the video and just watch it. It's absolutely transfixing the way it wobbles around. Well, so good.
Matt, you know the story of Icarus and his father.
Mm-hmm. Yeah? I'm well aware of
attempting to escape Crete, I believe it was, by means of obviously the wings that I think his dad made out of feathers and wax, and he got too close to the sun. So let's hope that there's no wax involved, Matt.
I'm pretty certain they won't have used wax on the solar orbiter. It's very tempting, isn't it, to call solar orbiters like that Icarus? Of course, I think isn't Daedalus the father of Icarus?
Actually, I think you're right. No, you are right for sure.
Yeah, there you go.
He was a master craftsman, I believe, Matt. We all need to brush up on our Greek mythology after this call. There will be a test.
Daedalus is the name of Alan Bond's fully fledged interstellar spacecraft, and also, I think, the name of the spacecraft in the National Geographic program Mars. Well, so there we go. Jamie.
Yeah.
My favourite bit of news of the week, it's not really my favourite bit of news of the week. It's really quite ridiculous. Uber billionaire Yusaku Maezawa has now backtracked on his plans to solicit a woman for a SpaceX moon journey.
What's he said now?
He's actually said to think that 27,722 women with earnest intentions and courage had used their precious time to apply, makes me feel extremely remorseful to conclude and inform everyone with this selfish decision of mine.
Okay, what's he actually saying though? Is he not
He's
doing
not
it?
doing it now. He's not doing it now. He's
no shit,
he's
Sherlock.
decided for personal reasons. It never felt quite right for him, so he's decided not to
never
do
felt quite right, and everyone told him that
it.
he's just going to make the worst decision of his life.
Yeah,
if he goes ahead.
It's not very modern, is it? Really?
No, it's really not. Oh dear.
Oh.
Anyway, so Matt, you told me that we've got an interview today.
We do have an interview.
And do pray. Who is it?
It is Andrew Jones.
Yes,
Andrew Jones, who a lot of you will know because he is pretty much the best sort of Chinese space program Twitterer, and also writes for lots and lots of other.
He's really
well,
good.
yes, a prolific Chinese space program journalist. So he writes for Space News, Planetary Society, Space.com, IEEE, Sky and Telescope. So he writes for all of those. The links I'll put in the blogs to his various articles, because they're always very, very interesting. It's often where I get any Chinese news that we have.
Interesting. Yeah. If you're not following Andrew, please get involved.
Yeah. So without any further delay, how about a Kute?
A Kute.
The Interplanetary Podcast, putting the ace back into space.
So welcome to the podcast, Andrew.
Thanks very much for having me.
Give us a little rundown of the recent Chinese space endeavours and where you think they're possibly going to go, and then we'll drill down into some of those areas in more detail.
Absolutely. Well, if this was even 2 or 3 years ago, then it would be a lot easier, I think, to give an overview of what's been going on. The last few years, there's been a big acceleration in the launch rate. Some of the Vega plans that they've had for, say, exploration and space science and for new launches have become a lot more concrete, so we know what's going on. And basically, what we're dealing with now is a comprehensive space program that the Chinese have, which covers all areas: civilian, human spaceflight, military, commercial. And all of this seems to be some kind of strategic vision that they have for outer space, which would have implications in a number of areas. So developing China's economy, high technology, spin-offs, applications, and so on, for the military, for power projection as China becomes a much more global player, deterrent and so on, diplomacy on the commercial side as well, about developing a space-related economy. Lots going on, and it can be quite challenging just to kind of wake up in the morning and see what's going on. And there's all kinds of companies and launch plans, announcements.
Well, just drilling down a little bit, is there something, say, cultural or political that means that China have been able to have this really accelerated rate of growth in this particular sector? Because it seems to me it's almost unprecedented. Like you said, like a few years ago, we wouldn't even be talking about it. And then suddenly here we are. And in 2019, they had more launches than America, quite considerably more, if you take out the Electron launches and things like that. So it's kind of, well, they're on the stage, aren't they, as a space superpower already in a very short time. Is there a kind of, is that down to a cultural Chinese thing, or is it down to the way that their political system works? What's your feeling on that?
Well, China did actually join the spacefaring nations a long time ago. So they had the first launch in 1970. And even in the aftermath of Sputnik, Mao Zedong, who was then the leader, had noted that China is interested in launching satellites. And this was primarily national defense. So they wanted launchers to be able to launch nuclear payloads, for example. So very early on, they recognized that, okay, this is important. And then following the Mao era and the end of the Cultural Revolution, you had Deng Xiaoping come into power post-1978, and he had the understanding that China's always kind of going to be behind the other powers if it doesn't make a concerted effort in certain areas. And one of these areas was space and just generally high technology. So things were able to kind of bubble along during the harsh years of the Cultural Revolution, where there wasn't really a strong economy at all, wasn't many funds, but they managed to keep things going. Into the 80s, with the start of rapid economic growth, they managed to lay out some plans to develop weather satellites, communication satellites, generally developing more launches with different capabilities to different orbits and so on, and slowly be able to build up and slowly kind of catch up in the infrastructure that they have in outer space. So looking at what the Western powers and the Soviet Union have been doing and kind of build towards that. So what we're seeing now is long-term plans such as the Beidou positioning and navigation constellation, which started say around 2000. So that's part of a way to make China not dependent on GPS, which would have implications for, say, military uses, so for guidance and tracking of targets and guidance of missiles and so on, but also then economic benefits with downstream applications. The Beidou system that's taken up a large part of the number of launches in recent years. Remote sensing, all these kinds of things, they're slowly being built up. On the political side, I would say that communication satellites, I mean, that's important for news and video and so on. But when you look at the size of China and how remote some of these areas are, it was clear to the Chinese Communist Party that having communication satellites out in geo would allow you to kind of send their message into places in China, which otherwise would be very difficult to reach with like terrestrial kind of telecommunications infrastructure. So there are political aspects. I suppose what we've seen is you have this China Aerospace Science and Technology Corporation, which has kind of changed names and changed a bit over the years. But that's grown to around 200,000 employees, I think. Yeah. Somewhere around about there. So they've been very busy in certain areas. They've had certain launch rates, lots of different plans, which would need to be brought to fruition. For example, in 1992, they brought in this human spaceflight plan, which would be to be able to put astronauts into orbit, then launch some test modules, which were the Tiangong and Tiangong 2 space labs, and then build a modular space station. So they've had these kind of things on the back burner. What we're seeing now, which is starting to add to the launch rates, would be the opening of a commercial sector. So before 2014 or before late 2014, almost all the space activities were going through this China Aerospace Science and Technology Corporation, or CASC, which I can hopefully use from now on. There was a central government decision in late 2014 where, having looked at what SpaceX was doing and Planet Labs and so on, they realized that, okay, this kind of state-run or state-owned enterprise system that we have is a bit cumbersome. So we can release what kind of expertise and kind of capital that we have into another sphere of activity where they can kind of transfer technology and start developing launchers and small satellites. So you have this CASC now and the Chinese Academy of Sciences and kind of a sister corporation to CASC, which is more focused on missiles and so on. So these kind of three main bases, you've seen lots of employees leave their workplaces and go and start up companies. So you have things like Space T, which are making small satellite platforms and allowing other companies to kind of put things into space. So lots of light launch rockets, which are coming to the markets and coming onto the pad for testing and so on. So it's a real explosion in that sense, but it's been kind of building over decades into what we're seeing now. So it's not kind of like a sudden rush. There's been expertise and capital and resources which have been building, and now they're kind of being deployed on a large scale.
From an outsider looking into China, it seems that they take their education system extremely seriously and want this kind of a very highly educated Chinese, particularly in science and technology, and the fact that you see so many Chinese students in British and American universities doing those subjects. With such a huge population doing that, presumably when this population goes back and they're taking all this science and technology with them, we're going to see China start to really take leaps and bounds in the kind of technology and science development of space as well, just because they've just got the huge numbers of actual brains going into that subject.
Yeah, that's an interesting point. So I think one of the outside perspectives is that China struggles to innovate in some ways, and I suppose in the space sector you can kind of see some of that. I mean, looking at the launches, they had a lot of help from the Soviet Union in developing the older hypergolic Long March launch vehicles, and a lot of these, like Long March 2, 3, 4, they're kind of derivative. They use similar engines and so on, and that had been serving them for a long time. But now I was speaking to one Western company who have been dealing recently with China, and they kind of had the same impression that, there's lots of resources, there's lots of education. So, for example, you have Beihang University, which is an aerospace university, and you have so many graduates coming out of that each year. So there's a great kind of base for China to build on. But that there's still a gap in innovation, and she was saying that there's an opportunity still for kind of European and maybe American companies to a less degree, given the political challenges, that they can take advantage of opportunities where in areas where China's still lagging or lacking certain expertise, and they can fill these areas and make a bit of money and really get involved in these space endeavors.
Yeah, I mean, I suppose we could really drill down into why that kind of imagination, why there's an imagination gap, innovation gap. But I guess that's a huge subject, isn't it, to sort of start digging down into? I suspect, because I think that would have a cultural element to it, and maybe the fact that that level of education, I suppose, hasn't been around long enough.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, this is one of the fascinating and very challenging and daunting things about covering China, is there's so many different kind of aspects to everything that's going on. So you've already mentioned the political and cultural aspects, which there are, and then there's education, and then you can really kind of spend a long time trying to work out how that plays into the space sector and so on. So yeah, it's overall, it's just absolutely fascinating to follow and try to kind of think about where this is going to go and why.
Yeah, no, absolutely. So let's drill down into some specifics then. So I'm going to start with drilling down into, say, their ambitions for the moon. Now, I was talking to Helen Sharman just at the close of the year, and she was had the feeling that we might see Chinese boots on the moon before American boots. What do you think about that one?
Oh, I think that's a big call. So of course we have the Artemis program, which is aiming for 2024, which I think most observers would say is very, very ambitious. Mm-hmm. And there's a number of factors going up against that. Realizing that date. I think for China actually landing on the moon. Well, the first thing I should say that there is no officially approved project to put Chinese astronauts on the moon. However, although they haven't explicitly, said they're going to do this, and it's funded, and it's not in the space white papers or the 5-year plans that they have, we can see that they're working towards this through developing the different components that you would need. So we just had a kind of confirmation this week that the first Long March 5B launch will take place in the first half of the year, and it looks like maybe April for this. So that's a launcher which they are going to use to launch space station modules. But for this test launch, there will be kind of an uncrewed test flight of a new generation crewed spacecraft. So it's kind of much bigger than the Shenzhou. it would be capable of handling the hard radiation of deep space, but also making a high energy re-entry after coming back from the moon. So that's one aspect they're working on. There are designs which are being shown at space and air shows of a new launch vehicle which could potentially send a spacecraft to the moon, like a crewed spacecraft. So this would be kind of 3 5-meter diameter cores put together. So kind of looking like a Falcon Heavy, but using Long March 5 technology and similar engines. So that would, if they do go ahead with working on that launcher, because they have the cores kind of sorted out, and the engines, these Kerolox engines, that would maybe be able to speed things up. The longer term plan, which we'd understood for quite a few years, was that they were developing a Long March 9, which would be kind of a Saturn V class, like 100 tons to LEO launcher. That would be ready for a test flight somewhere between 2028 and 2030. The date keeps changing for some reason when they talk about this. So, I mean, if they develop that launcher and they use that, so that would launch into low Earth orbit. The Long March 5B would send up the crewed spacecraft, and then they would have a Earth orbit rendezvous, and off they go to the moon. If they do that, they're looking at 2030s to do that. So if they do this new launcher, then maybe mid-2020s they could go around the moon. That would be something. But for actual, I haven't seen like serious plans on a lander, so we haven't seen much development there. One thing that is interesting, which you probably wanted to talk about later, would be the Chang'e 5 mission, which is a lunar sample return.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, so that should be launching late this year. There's some kind of indication, maybe late October, somewhere around about there, but we'll have to see. So this would be the first lunar sample return since I think it was 1976, which was Luna 24 from the Soviet Union. So the interesting thing about that is, instead of taking the direct return route, which Luna 24 did, so just like launching from the lander straight back to Earth, the Chinese are going to put the lander on the moon, then they're going to scoop up the samples, put it into an ascent vehicle that's going to go up into lunar orbit and rendezvous with the service module, which will then take the samples back to Earth. So the complexity of this design makes you think, okay, why are they doing it like this? Why are they doing it like this? Why do they not do the direct thing? And the obvious thing would be, okay, they're kind of testing for landing astronauts on the moon and then getting them back to Earth. So, there's a lot of signs that this is what China wants to do. But, I think the timeline is looking like 2030s, unless they do something to kind of expedite this, which is possible with a new launcher, and if they have some kind of lander plans, which they're working on.
Right, yeah, absolutely. I mean, they seem to be in a similar boat to the Americans. I mean, I always think, well, I've not actually seen a lander yet, so the thought about getting to 2024 does seem, like you said, extremely ambitious. So I think it's good. At least China look as though they're gearing up for something at the moon, which presumably does give America that incentive to get things done quicker. Do you think there is that rivalry between China and America in the same old way that there was between Russia and America, or the USSR, I should say, and America?
That's very hard to say. I'd be very interested to hear what the aerospace industry and community in the US really thinks about this. I mean, there's a range of views where some completely dismiss anything China's doing as just prestige. And then on the other end, you have people saying that, look, China's going to take over the moon, and they've already got a communication satellite beyond the moon in a Lagrange point. And if we don't do something, so I wonder how much of that is using China to kind of boost their own kind of ideas and plans, rather than actually being concerned. It's very hard to say, but it's a very interesting question, and it's very interesting to see how the US reacts to whatever China does, especially with regards to the moon.
Yeah, I mean, it's because it's quite useful, isn't it, for China, because China can at least see what the blueprint that the US laid down in terms of space exploration, can't they, really? And you can see they're gearing up to sort of do all the same things that America have done, that NASA have done, I suppose. But there's other rivalries, of course, aren't there, with China? And I know that when you speak to Indian space experts, they see China as the sort of rival nation to them. But do China see India as a rival, or or barely notice it? I can't work that one out. Or is there a regional space race between those two?
I wouldn't say a space race, but they are very kind of aware of the military and diplomatic and prestige implications of, say, what Japan and what India and what China are doing. So they're all very carefully looking at what's going on. How much of a race there is, I don't know, and I don't know enough about either Japan's or India's space programs. Looking at the launch rate, you can see that it's very hard to compare. Also, what is it, 34 that China launched last year, and the year before that was 39. So that's that was ahead of the world in many regards. Some of that is kind of launching infrastructure that the Russians and Europeans and the Americans already have, so they're kind of catching up. That's partly why they have a high launch rate. But to be able to have all those orbital launches and have all those payloads, I think that says a lot about the Chinese kind of space industry and how what depth it has. So on the other hand, in 2014, when India managed to put the Mangalyaan orbiter around Mars, I think that was kind of a bit of a blow to China. So they, officially they congratulated India, but there was also kind of mumblings among the public about, okay, well, how has India just gone and done this, and we haven't? Why aren't we there? So that could be one factor in why they pushed hard to get this Mars 2020 orbiter and rover mission, which they have now. That might be a factor in getting that actually approved and launching like in 2020 rather than 2022 or later.
Yeah, so yeah, tell us a little bit about that mission, because it's one mission I don't really know that much about, caught up in the excitement of things like the Franklin rover and all that. So yeah, tell us a little bit about the Chinese 2020 Mars mission.
Okay, so this is actually going to be China's first independent interplanetary mission. So they did have a launch in 2011 where they had this Yinghua 1 orbiter, which was piggybacking on a Russian launch, which was the Phobos Grunt mission, which was going to be a Phobos sample return, which would have been such a cool mission. However, that didn't leave Earth orbit, which was a shame. So China's back now and doing this by itself with a Long March 5 rocket, which is China's largest rocket by far. And when it was launched the second time in 2017, it failed. It failed to reach orbit. And it took over 900 days, I think it was, to get it flying again. So at the end of December, China had this Long March 5 launch, and they really needed that to go well for this Mars mission to go ahead, Chang'e 5 sample return, and also the space station, which they've been planning since 1992. So that was huge. So that launch went okay, it went very well. So now in July, there's a 2.5 3 week Mars launch window in mid-late July to early August. So it's looking like July. I think Xinhua said yesterday they'll be launching in July from this Wenchang coastal launch site. So the interesting thing is, which might be partly related to the India thing. So India launched an orbiter. So China is going with an orbiter and rover combo in its first launch to Mars. So that's quite ambitious. So I think the spacecraft is around about 5 tons altogether. So that will be an orbiter with high and medium resolution cameras, and then a 240 kilo rover, which will land somewhere near Mons Elysium, up kind of like in the northwest, if you're looking at a flat map. I think they've tested the parachutes back in 2016, so they had some kind of high-speed parachutes ready. The landing technology with the thrusters, that's derived from the Chang'e 3 and Chang'e 4 missions for the lunar landings, which they had in 2013 and 2019. So it seems that all the different parts of this are ready. All the payloads have been integrated to the spacecraft. They've overcome the challenges of trying to simulate kind of a Mars landing on Earth, given the different gravity and the thin atmosphere and so on. So they've worked on all these different aspects. It seems about ready to go. And it would, well, so we have Mars 2020 from NASA. We have the ESA Rosalind Franklin rover. And then you have this, it's currently called Huoxing Yihao, which is kind of Mars 1. So not a very exciting name so far. Maybe they change it. I'm not sure about that. So you have these 3 landing attempts going on. So only NASA's landed successfully and operated something on Mars. So it's going to be interesting to see if China can make it first time, and then if ESA and Russia can kind of make up for what happened in 2016 with the first ExoMars. So this is very challenging. I think that it will say a lot about what China is capable of if they can pull this off, but also that I think they're in this for the long haul. So if it doesn't go well, then I don't think it's the end of the world. They are planning a Mars sample return after this, which would be 2028 to 2030, sometime, one of those launch windows. And that would be, if NASA and ESA don't get their plans going, then that's going to be the first ever. And the science that could come out of that could be, a revelation. So
I mean, there's a kind of mini space race there, isn't there? You can, the fact that China are trying to do that presumably does put a rocket up ESA and NASA's bum to get that to get that sample return mission working, because it's you don't kind of want to be beaten to it by your rivals. And actually, there's an interesting point, isn't there, with China and the people that they work with and their collaborations. If we move away from rivalries, because ESA can work with China, but the Americans try and avoid, aren't really allowed to, are they? Do you see a thawing of that attitude, or do you think that that's just stuck for good?
I think we can see kind of what's been going on in international relations and certain national political environments over the last, say, 4 years or so, that things can change quite quickly and quite dramatically. And sometimes it doesn't make very much sense. But so at the moment there is this language inserted into an appropriations bill in the US Congress, which doesn't completely prohibit NASA from working with China, but they would have to give something like 60 days notice and have clearance from the FBI to say there's no kind of national security danger to dealing with China in this particular aspect. So it's a very high bar to kind of do anything with China. I would say that it doesn't look very good at the moment. If that's what you wanted to see, if you wanted to see the US and China kind of combine to achieve some kind of goal. So one, it's hard to see what kind of goal that they would be so important that they would need to come together to do. I mean, they could be involved in the gateway. I mean, in terms of capabilities, they could be involved in, almost anything now, given the launches and the experience they have with various large satellite and spacecraft and so on. But the thing is that at the moment, things between China and the United States are very tense. But the thing is that this will maybe come to a head, or then maybe it will be somehow eased in some way, where there's some kind of dispute, and then they realize, okay, well, maybe we were a bit close to something very much catastrophic there. So how can we move forward and build some trust and look forward? And maybe you could say that perhaps space could be one avenue in the future in which they look to kind of build some trust and try to move forward together. I mean, that's not really a prediction or a hope or anything like that. It's just trying to think about how exploration kind of goes forward in kind of human terms, and we sometimes see these things kind of big exploration efforts happen after wars or something like that. So it's certainly something that at the moment it doesn't look like there's very many opportunities, but things might change, and they might change in strange ways. So it's something to very much keep an eye on.
That Long March 5 launch at the end of last year, that kind of does point that somehow the Chinese space program is a little bit fragile, and it has this kind of single point of failure. Had that gone wrong, that would have set back a whole heap of ambitions, Moon, Mars, and space station ambitions, and it's just this one point of failure. Is that a problem? Is that something that you can see China addressing soon?
Yeah, I think that's a fair point. Of course, this was a new launcher. New launchers can be very difficult. So Ariane 5 had a hard start to things. So that's kind of normal in a sense, but at the same time, we've seen the Chang'e 5 mission and the space station. I mean, they were supposed to start launching in 2018. If that second launch had gone well in 2017, they would have tested the Long March 5B already. Then they would have been, if everything had gone well, then now you might have one or two of the modules already up and docked in space and astronauts making visits. So it has delayed things. And it has been a single point of failure. And actually, the development of the Long March 5 did take a lot longer than they had originally hoped. So I think they're maybe looking to get it flying in 2012 rather than late 2016, or it might have even been earlier than that. But I think that's another reason behind the this opening of the space sectors, especially the launch and the small satellite sectors, is that they're able to then have alternatives, alternative access to space and low-cost access to space, so that if there are problems with the long marches, then they have alternatives in which they can continue launches, and especially in the event of some kind of a conflict, they would still be able to kind of get satellites up very quickly. I think that's one reason why you're seeing a lot of these Kuaizhou 1A, which are kind of semi-commercial, but really they're spin-offs from a state-owned enterprise. So I think that's one reason behind why those launchers are being developed and being deployed. So
yeah, I mean, one intriguing one that I saw on your Twitter feed was they're going to be building a reusable Long March. Is that correct?
Yeah, so that's the Long March 8, which they are hoping to launch sometime in 2020. So I'm not quite sure when. So that would be kind of taking Long March 7 kerosene and liquid oxygen heritage launcher, and some from I think maybe an upper stage from the Long March 3B, which is an older launcher, and then trying to then see if they can get this kind of reusable first stage going. So when I've spoken to some people in the involved in these launch vehicles, in developing and manufacturing these launch vehicles, they haven't been convinced by the economic arguments of reusability. So this is kind of a test, and this Long March 8, they did change their plans. It was originally going to be expendable and just simply boost their capabilities to launch to sun synchronous orbits, but they decided instead, based on SpaceX, Blue Origin, to a lesser degree, that, okay, this is the way that the industry's going. So, we're going to have to look into this. So that's going to be interesting to see how that goes. It would be great if they would actually have, a live stream of this, although I doubt it very much. So, yeah. So I don't think we're going to get kind of like, the Falcon 9 blooper reel or anything like that. But yeah, that's an interesting thing that they're taking account of what's going on internationally and trying to kind of keep up with things. So,
but have they done any sort of grasshopper tests? Have they done any of that sort of early preliminary stuff that SpaceX used to love sticking on their feeds? Have they done any of those, or just wouldn't we know?
Well, the only thing I can kind of think of coming from Cask was they did this kind of a landing, but it was using kind of a jet engine rather than a rocket engine. So they were testing the guidance and so on, and avionics and whatnot, but they weren't actually doing this with Kerolox engine. So it's kind of like, okay, well, interesting, but you're talking about launching an orbital launcher. So yeah, what's going on? Of course, there's this company Link Space, which they've been working on some kind of New Line 1, which would be an orbital reusable launcher. So a very, very light lift. So looking at 200 kilograms or something like that to LEO, rather than a huge, comparatively huge Falcon 9. But yeah, that's the thing. Sometimes these things just come out of the blue, and it's kind of like, oh, you're doing that now. Well, we had no idea right here.
Yeah,
beyond China.
Yeah, I mean I did find that intriguing that the biggest kind of we've seen the SpaceX rocket, but we're not convinced by that economic argument that you can keep refurbishing these things and it makes sense. And they seem to be the Chinese seem to be the only people really making that point in any kind of strong way at all.
Yeah, I think in part. So they as ever, they don't want to be left behind. So they're checking this out. On the other hand, there was, I think on the 50th anniversary of this Cask enterprise, they they released like this space transportation roadmap, which ran up to like 2050. And it's hard to know what to think about this, because some of the near-term things were kind of like Long March 5, Long March 8, which we just mentioned, Long March 9. But then they said that, okay, by 2035, we want all our launches to be kind of reusable, or fully reusable, I think was the term, or how it translated. So I don't know about second stages and so on, but I imagine that they're talking first stages. So they are, in some sense, taking it seriously, but maybe not get carried away. The other thing that was in that roadmap was a nuclear shuttle by around 2050, and what was it? Orbital space planes. So lots of, I think some people would describe as unicorns, but let's say very, very ambitious plans in there.
Yeah, actually, that reminds me of. They seem to have a technology that was very similar to the Sabre engine. Do you know much about that?
Yeah, I saw something online not long back, and I thought, oh, well, it's obvious where that's come from. But I don't know anything about that.
Okay, so
I mean, in this commercial space sector or private space sector, although people will obviously straight away say, well, it's not private, it's China, but okay. But there are so many companies. There's at least 20 companies. They're either working on launchers or engines, and these can be Kerolox, they can be methane, they can be monopropellants, so they can be reusable or not variable thrust. All these different things that are going on. So there's so much going on. It's very hard to keep track and try to kind of work out, okay, which ones are going to make it and which ones are, just not going to get very far. So it's really fascinating and time consuming to follow that. So there was a test the other day, I think it was Beijing Deep Blue Aerospace, which is one of the much lesser known companies, but they're doing engine tests. So they're, clearly making progress, and they're not just, looking for investment for the sake of it.
Yeah. And who are the kind of personalities of the Chinese program? Because obviously we've got people like Jim Bridenstine and all those peeps over at NASA. But who are the sort of movers and shakers in the Chinese sector?
That's a good question. I think they're mostly scientists, to be honest, because they're able to kind of go and give talks, and those talks are able to be kind of, they can have articles about them. Other than that, I mean, if you're talking about the state aerospace industry, you have a few people who talk now and again at like press conferences or then at political events. But the main ones would be kind of Ouyang Zheyuan, who is like a cosmochemist, and he's kind of must be around about 80 now. So he's kind of a big proponent of lunar exploration. He was the guy behind this kind of idea of mining helium-3 from the moon, which we won't get into. So he's quite well known. He'll speak about exploration and science and so on. Ye Pei-jian is another one who's involved in the lunar exploration side of things. Again, he is kind of advanced in years and probably retired, but still influential. And people listen to what he says. So I think he was someone who said something about saying that kind of cislunar space is analogous to the South China Sea. So there were lots of people jumping on this saying, look, China's trying to take over, the moon and space. So it's probably getting a bit carried away. He was speaking to the military then at that time. So he's kind of trying to kind of get them, to take space seriously, maybe. Or then again, maybe he has some very kind of clear, strong strategic thinking and is backed by People's Liberation Army. It's very hard to say. Long Lihao is another one of these old guys who's kind of the face of the rocket launches and so on. So he was interviewed after the Long March launches, the new rockets and so on. And so, yeah. Other than that, I think most people think of the CNSA, the China National Space Administration, as kind of analogous to NASA, but really it's not. It's just kind of the international face of the Chinese space program. So they don't have much power, but they're there to kind of go to meetings and have discussions and so on. But they're not really the ones which are driving what's happening in the Chinese space industry.
Okay, so that would be CASC, would it? Would be the people that are driving it?
To a degree. So it starts to get very complicated. So if you think about China, you'd have three kind of pillars, really. You'd have the government and the military down on the bottom, and then up above you'd have the Communist Party of China. And the Communist Party of China is in control of the military, it's in control of the government. It's basically, it makes all the decisions. So they would have some kind of what were called small leading groups, and they would have some kind of strategic vision and decision making over the space industry, and that would filter down through the ministries in charge of CASC and so on. So CASC does have leeway to kind of pursue different projects that it wants and to have an input, as far as we can tell, into what it does and why. But most of it would be coming from the party, from some kind of party level, high level decision making, which I have no idea about.
Yeah, it's all quite covert, isn't it?
Yeah, very very nebulous and kind of opaque. But, yeah.
Well, so if people want to know more about what you do, what's the best place they can find? Place to find you and your work on the Chinese space program? Yeah,
so I'm very active on Twitter. My handle is AJ_FI. I write at Space News once or twice a week. And I really suggest that you follow the First Up newsletter, which we have, which Jeff Faust puts together. So if you want to get an idea of what's going on in the industry and beyond every day, and also a funny quote at the end, that's excellent.
It's truly excellent. Yeah. Agreed.
Yeah. Also write for the Planetary Society. Occasionally updating on what's going on the exploration side. And they also have a new newsletter, which is the Downlink. So they sum up the exploration side of things. That's quite interesting. I write for IEEE Spectrum, which is excellent technology-focused publication. Sky and Telescope, and also space.com as well. So there's what we had this week alone has been, some fantastic images from Chang'e 4 from the far side of the moon, and some details about this new deep space crewed spacecraft, which will be going up in the next few months.
Yeah, I saw that. That look super exciting. Yeah, and I guess they're not far behind, are they? In that, I mean, how does that vehicle compare to the Orion capsule?
It's supposed to be a multi-purpose vehicle. So initially, it would be going to the space station, which would allow them to send up between 3 to 6 astronauts, but the space station is going to hold 3 astronauts for 6 months at a time. So I'll be sending 3 astronauts and 500 kilograms of cargo with them, and also allow them to bring cargo back with the astronauts as well. So like experiments and so on. But the point of this is that if you put the service module onto this capsule, then you can go to deep space. So the idea is that, yes, it's kind of analogous to Orion in some senses, although people draw comparisons to like the Dragon with regards to this. But the test flight is going to have an apogee of 8,000 kilometers. So it's going to be testing high-speed re-entry, so testing this kind of new heat protection that they have for re-entry and testing the parachutes and so on. So it's going to be a very interesting test. So if that goes well, it would show that, well, okay, they're not far behind having their own version of Orion. And one of the guys behind this was telling me that because they developed the Shenzhou not so long ago, then the kind of life support controls and all that, they'll be able to bring in all the systems into this quite quickly if the test flight goes well. So the test flight's testing basically avionics, performance in LEO, the parachutes, the re-entry, the landing, and recovery as well.
Yeah, it's always the heat shields, it seems to me, that's the problem. So, yeah, that'd be really interesting, wouldn't it? Well, thanks very much for taking the time and speaking to me. There's so many things to look into, isn't there, with the Chinese? And I can't wait to keep following it, because it's one of the sort of most rapidly changing programs, isn't it? So that it always kind of takes you by surprise when something new pops up.
So no, I appreciate the opportunity to have a chat about this.
Thanks very much.
The Interplanetary Podcast is alive!
It's not just us. He is also putting the ace back into space. It's official.
I'll tell you something, Jamie. After we were talking afterwards, and he absolutely loves your sense of humour.
Oh, really?
He's a big fan of yours, Jamie. Big fan.
Oh my God! So wait, are you telling me that maybe one day I'll be asked to be a leader on a panel?
Yeah, if there's like a sort of...
Maybe Andrew will invite me. Well, that's very flattering to hear. I'm a big fan also. It'll be just me and Andrew.
Right, Jamie, we work very hard on this podcast, and we do lots of things.
We do, yeah.
Who's it made? Who actually facilitates that and actually means that we can keep going? Because without these people, I don't think we could keep going, could we? Who are these people,
Matt?
Jamie?
We genuinely couldn't. It's tricky when you've both got very stressful full-time jobs to smash this out every week. But we're not moaning. I tell you what we're doing. We're thanking our Patreons, because genuinely, if you all buggered off tomorrow, then we'd probably have to pack this up. I know that sounds a bit doom and gloomy, but you make it happen. All of our little trips and investment into research and equipment that we need comes from you.
Absolutely true.
Matt, if people want to join this clan of legends, how do they go about it?
They should go to www.interplanetary.org.uk and make their way to Patreon via that way, or they can go to patreon.com/interplanetary, where they can donate and join people like Catherine, who joined this week. Welcome,
Catherine.
So, yes, it would be absolutely fantastic to see Yol on there. And, of course, that does give you access to the Discord. And I cannot tell you how cool the Discord is. We have lots and lots of
you access
very
to Discord,
funny conversations in there.
You get the first invitation to our events. We're doing loads more live stuff this year, hopefully. We've got a few really exciting things in the books that we can't speak about quite yet, haven't we, Matt?
Oh, we certainly do.
So keep talking. There's extra content. We want you to be involved in literally putting the show together. So get involved.
Yeah, we of course will be live at the Science Museum on Yuri's night at the Science Museum late.
It's the 25th of March.
Yeah. So 25th of March at the Science Museum, Yuri night late. Lots of other space stuff coming on, but definitely come and say hello.
There's so much great stuff. It's not just us. There's a host of people. It's going to be a great day and night. So get that in your diary. Come down. Let's have a big old geek out, followed by a beer, maybe somewhere in London, Matt.
Absolutely. What I'm going to do is I'm going to buy some merch and we might have a little giveaway. Let's have a little giveaway, Jamie, of some interplanetary podcast mugs and merch.
I tell you what, if that doesn't make you get the tube to South Kensington, I don't know what will.
Well, it's going to be super fun. It's all organised by the wonderful Harriet, who's been absolutely amazing as always.
Harriet Brettle is our Lord and Saviour. So please follow her on Twitter and see all the amazing work and shows that she gets involved with. She'll be there too, so come down.
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm going to go, Jamie. It's a pretty miserable day, but I'm going to go, and I wish all good weekends for our lovely Spodcats.
Matt, just remember, when you think it's a miserable day, just know this, that the rain is only part of it. Above the rain, Matt, there's the solar system, and then there's stuff like black holes, there's planets, there's galaxies, there's Brian Blessed soaring overhead.
And also, there's the new game on Discord where we're trying to decide if you can guess what the next name of the Rocket Lab Electron's going to be.
Oh, that's a great game.
It's a good game.
Any clues?
Well, we don't know. Well, I mean, it's always a crazy name, like Look No More Fingers and stuff like that. So one of my guesses was, I wish I had 3 hands, or something like that, and it was from the film Total Recall.
That is great. I've just remembered what scene that's from. Absolutely brilliant. Well, I'll see you soon.
See you soon.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.